Elijah Dawson found her at 3 in the morning, curled in the hay like a wounded animal waiting to die. 9 years old, lips blue, fingers blackened from frostbite. When his lantern light hit her face, she didn't run, just looked up at him with eyes that had forgotten how to hope.
"Please, mister,"
she whispered through cracked lips.
"I ain't asking for nothing. Just let me die somewhere warm."
He set down his rifle and knelt beside her. "You ain't dying tonight, child. Not in my barn. Not anywhere." That decision would bring the whole town down on his head and give him back everything he thought he buried forever. Subscribe now and follow Rosie's journey to the very end. Drop your city in the comments. Let me see how far this story reaches. The barn door banged open at 3 in the morning. Elijah Dawson grabbed his rifle before his feet hit the floor. 30 years on the frontier had taught him that much. Sounds in the night meant trouble. Wolves, coyotes, rustlers looking for easy cattle. He crossed the cabin in 4 strides, threw open the door, and stepped into 20 below darkness. Snow swirled around him. The wind cut through his long johns like they were made of paper. Across the yard, his barn door swung on its hinges, banging against the frame. Something was inside. Eli cocked the rifle and moved. His boots crunched through knee-deep snow. The cold burned his lungs with every breath. By the time he reached the barn, his fingers were already going numb on the trigger. He kicked the door wide. "Whoever's in here, you got 3 seconds to show yourself." Nothing. He raised the lantern. Light swept across hay bales, feed sacks, the nervous shuffle of his horses in their stalls. Everything looked normal. Everything looked... Movement. Back corner. Something small, burrowing deeper into the hay. Eli swung the rifle around. "I said show yourself. I ain't asking again." "Don't shoot." The voice was thin, high, broken. A child's voice. Eli lowered the barrel 2 inches. "Come out where I can see you. Slow." The hay shifted. A shape emerged, crawling because walking was too hard. Small, thin, shaking so violent it looked like convulsions. A girl. She couldn't have been more than 9 years old. Her dress, maybe white once, now brown with dirt and darker stains, hung off her like a sack. Her lips were blue. Her fingers curled against her chest like claws, the tips blackened from frostbite. She looked up at him with eyes that had stopped hoping for anything a long time ago. "Please, mister." Her voice came out in ragged gasps between shivers. "I ain't stealing nothing. I just needed somewhere warm. I'll go. I'll go right now, just don't—" She tried to stand. Her legs buckled. She went down hard, face first into the hay, and made a sound that wasn't quite a cry. Something smaller. Something that had learned crying didn't help. Eli set down the rifle. He crossed the barn and knelt beside her. Up close, she looked worse. Skin gray as ash, cheekbones sharp enough to cut paper. When he touched her forehead, the cold shocked him, like touching a corpse. "How long you been out in this?" She couldn't answer. Her teeth were chattering too hard. Eli scooped her up without another word. She weighed nothing. He could feel every rib through the thin cotton dress, could count her vertebrae with his fingertips. She didn't fight, didn't have the strength. He carried her across the yard, kicked open his cabin door, and set her in the chair closest to the dying fire. She slumped there like a rag doll, still shaking, still making that small, broken sound in her throat. Eli threw logs on the fire, stoked it until the flames roared, grabbed every blanket he owned and wrapped them around her one by one. "Stay there," he said. "Don't you move." He put water on to heat, found the leftover stew from supper, poured coffee. His hands moved fast, automatic. The way they'd moved when Samuel had been sick with fever, when every second counted, when... He stopped, breathed. That was 4 years ago. Different child, different night. Same fear in his chest. He brought the food to her, set it on the small table beside her chair. Stew in a bowl, coffee with extra cream, bread with butter slathered thick. The girl stared at it like it might bite her. "Go on," Eli said. "Eat." "What do I got to do for it?" The question hit him like a fist to the gut. "Nothing. You don't got to do nothing. Just eat." She picked up the spoon. Her hand shook so bad that half the stew ended up on the blanket. But she didn't seem to notice. She shoveled food into her mouth, fast, desperate, choking on it, like someone who'd learned that meals disappeared if you didn't eat quick enough. Eli watched. Something cold and hard settled in his chest. When the bowl was empty, she looked up at him. Tears streamed down her face. Not from sadness, from the shock of being warm, being full, being alive when she'd expected to be dead by morning.
"Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you, mister."
"Name's Elijah Dawson. Folks call me Eli." He pulled a chair across from her and sat. "What's yours?"
"Rosemary. Rosemary Aldridge."
"Where's your people, Rosemary?" The tears stopped. Her face went blank. That fast, like a door slamming shut.
"Dead.
"How?"
Fire. September. Our barn burned."
She paused. Her voice went flat, reciting facts she'd told too many times.
"Papa ran in to save the horses. Mama ran in after him. Neither one came out."
Eli knew that kind of loss, knew exactly how it felt to watch someone you loved disappear, and know you couldn't follow. "I'm sorry," he said, and meant it.
"Don't matter now."
"It matters." She looked at him strange, like he'd said something in a language she didn't understand. "Who's been looking after you since then?" Rosemary's hands tightened on the empty bowl. Her knuckles went white. "My aunt, Martha Aldridge. She runs the Silver Dollar in town." Eli knew the Silver Dollar. Knew Martha Aldridge, too. Hard woman. Sharp eyes. Ran her saloon like a general ran an army, and showed about as much mercy. "If you got an aunt in town," he said carefully, "what are you doing freezing to death in my barn 15 miles away?" Rosemary didn't answer. "Child, I asked you a question."
"I know."
Her voice dropped to a whisper.
"I'm trying to figure how much to tell you."
"How about the truth?" She laughed, bitter, old. The laugh of someone who'd learned that truth got you nothing but pain.
"The truth gets me sent back to her."
"Not if the truth is bad enough." Rosemary studied him for a long moment, weighing, measuring, trying to find the trap. Then, slowly, she pulled the blanket away from her neck. Eli saw the bruises. 4 of them. Purple-black against her pale skin. Finger-shaped. Someone had grabbed this child by the throat and squeezed hard enough to leave marks. His hands curled into fists. "Who did that?" "Aunt Martha, 3 days ago." Rosemary's voice stayed flat. "I broke a glass. She said I was costing her money. Said I had to learn." "Learn what?" "To be worth the food she put in my mouth." Eli stood up, walked to the window, pressed his forehead against the cold glass, and breathed until he could speak without shouting. "Show me your hands."
"Mr. Eli."
"Show me." Rosemary held them out, palms up, small and thin and scarred. Burn marks. Some old, healed, white and shiny. Some new, blistered and raw across her fingers and palms. "The fire?" Eli asked.
The old ones, from trying to pull Mama out. She paused. The new ones are from Aunt Martha's stove. She says I'm clumsy, says I need to learn to be more careful. Eli had seen enough cruelty in his life to recognize it. Those burns weren't accidents. They were lessons. Punishments.
How often does she hurt you?
Whenever I make mistakes, or when I don't work fast enough, or when she's been drinking. Rosemary shrugged. Most days, one way or another. What kind of work? Cleaning the saloon, washing dishes, emptying spittoons, serving drinks when she's short-handed. You're 9 years old. Aunt Martha says I'm old enough to earn my keep. Eli turned back to face her. Does she feed you? When I work good enough. How often is that? Rosemary looked at the empty stew bowl. Not as often as tonight. Eli felt something crack open in his chest. Something he'd kept locked away for 4 years, since the day he'd put his son in the ground and told himself he'd never feel anything that sharp again. Why'd you run? Rosemary's face crumpled. For the first time since he'd found her, she looked like what she was, a 9-year-old girl who'd lost everything and been handed to a monster. There was a man at the saloon last night. Her voice shook. He was drunk, real drunk. He put his hands. You don't have to say it. Aunt Martha saw. Rosemary's tears came hot and fast now. She saw, and she didn't stop him. She told me to quit making a fuss, said men pay good money, and I should be grateful anybody wanted to look at a scrawny thing like me. Eli's vision went red. She said what? Rosemary flinched, drew back into the blankets. Her whole body tensed, ready for a blow. Eli forced himself to breathe, forced his fists to unclench. I ain't angry at you. He kept his voice soft, though it cost him. You understand? None of this anger is for you. It's for her. Rosemary nodded, but her eyes stayed wary. She'd heard that before, probably. Right before someone hit her, anyway. How'd you get away? Out the back window, after everyone was asleep. I just started walking. 15 miles, in this cold, at night. I wasn't trying to get anywhere, Mr. Eli. She looked at him straight. I was trying to find somewhere quiet to die. Somewhere nobody would find me till spring. The words hung in the air between them. Why my barn? I saw your light. Watched you feed the horses yesterday afternoon through the fence. She paused. You were gentle with them. Talked to them soft. I figured maybe a man who treats animals kind might not shoot a kid on sight. Eli didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know what to do with the weight of it sitting on his chest. He sat back down across from her. I had a son once. Rosemary's eyes flickered. Samuel. He was 6 when the diphtheria took him. 4 years ago this past spring. Eli's voice caught. He pushed through it. His mama died bringing him into the world. So it was just me and him for 6 years. Then it was just me. I'm sorry, Mr. Eli. I'm telling you so you understand something. He leaned forward. I know what it's like to lose everyone you love. I know what it's like to think you got nothing left worth living for. I've been in that dark place, Rosemary. Lived there for 4 years. She watched him with those hollow eyes. But here's the thing I learned. Eli's voice went rough. Dark place don't have to be forever. Sometimes somebody shows up. Sometimes you get a choice you didn't expect. And if you're smart, if you're brave, you take it. What kind of choice? Eli stood, walked to the fireplace. Above it hung an old harmonica, dusty from years of not being touched. Samuel's harmonica.
The boy had loved that thing, had played it every night before bed, had driven Eli half crazy with the noise. He hadn't been able to look at it since the funeral. "You got two options," Eli said without turning around. "Come morning, I can hitch up the wagon and take you back to town, back to your aunt, back to that saloon." He heard Rosemary's breath catch. "Or you can stay here." He turned to face her. "I got a spare room. Used to be Samuel's. I got work needs doing, honest work, and I'll teach you proper. I got food enough for two, ain't fancy, but it's filling. I got a roof that don't leak, and a fire that burns all winter." Rosemary stared at him. "I ain't your blood," Eli continued. "I ain't nothing to you, legally speaking. Your aunt's got papers. She's got the law on her side. If you stay, she's going to come for you. It's going to be a fight." "Then why?" "Because somebody should have helped you 3 months ago, and nobody did. Because you're 9 years old, and you walked 15 miles through a blizzard looking for a place to die. And that ain't right. None of it's right." He crossed back to her chair and knelt so their eyes were level. "I ain't asking you to trust me. Not yet. I know trust's got to be earned, and you ain't got no reason to believe anything a stranger tells you in the middle of the night." Rosemary's lower lip trembled. "I'm just asking you to stay long enough to see. Stay through winter. See if maybe this old rancher ain't as bad as you expect. See if maybe—" His voice broke. "See if maybe we can help each other." Rosemary was quiet for a long time. The fire crackled. Wind moaned outside. Snow hissed against the windows. "What happens if I mess up?" she whispered finally. "Then you mess up, and I show you how to do it right. That's called learning." "What if I break something?" "Then we fix it, or we don't. Ain't nothing in this cabin worth hurting a child over." "What if—" Her voice cracked. "What if I'm as bad as Aunt Martha says I am? What if I'm lazy and ungrateful and disturbed and all the other things she—" "Then I reckon she's a liar." Eli's voice went hard. "Because I've been watching you for the past hour, and all I see is a brave little girl who survived hell and walked through fire and somehow kept going when most grown men would have given up." Tears spilled down Rosemary's cheeks. "You don't know me." "No, but I'd like to. If you'll let me." She wiped her face with the back of her scarred hand, looked at him with those old, tired eyes. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll stay." Eli nodded. The knot in his chest loosened just slightly. "Good. Now let's get you to bed. You need sleep." He led her to Samuel's room. The bed was made fresh. He changed the sheets every week, even though nobody slept in them. The quilt was the one his wife had sewn before she died, blue and white stars on a field of red. Rosemary stood in the doorway, staring. "It's so clean." "Get in. I'll leave the door open so the heat reaches you." She climbed into the bed, pulled the quilt up to her chin. She looked tiny in there, fragile, like a baby bird blown out of its nest. "Mr. Eli?" "Yeah?" "What if she comes? My aunt? What if she comes tonight?" Eli picked up his rifle from where he'd leaned it against the wall. "Then she'll have to go through me." He sat in his chair by the fire and watched the door until dawn. The sun was barely up when Rosemary padded into the kitchen. Eli looked up from the stove, where bacon sizzled in the pan. She stood in the doorway wearing one of Samuel's old nightshirts, too big for her, hanging to her knees, with the quilt wrapped around her shoulders like a cape. She looked better. Still too thin, still too pale, but the blue had left her lips, and the shaking had stopped. "Morning," Eli said. "You hungry?" "Yes, sir." She hesitated. "Is it okay that I slept so long?" "You needed it. Sit down." She sat at the table, watched him cook with wide, wary eyes.
"You always make breakfast?" she asked.
Every morning. Ranch work starts early, and a man can't work on an empty stomach. He flipped the bacon. Same goes for girls, I reckon. He set a plate in front of her. Bacon, eggs, biscuits with butter, more food than she'd probably seen in a week. Rosemary didn't move. What's wrong?
"I don't know what I'm supposed to do."
Eat.
"No, I mean," she twisted her hands in her lap. "For all this, the bed, the food, what do I have to do to earn it?"
Eli set down the spatula. Listen to me careful, because I'm only going to say this once. He pulled out the chair across from her and sat. You don't earn food in this house. You don't earn a bed. You don't earn being treated like a human being. Those things just are. You understand? Rosemary shook her head.
"What I mean is—"
Eli searched for the words. There's going to be work. Plenty of it. I'll teach you to gather eggs, milk the cow, help with the horses. You'll earn your keep that way, sure. But the keeping comes first. You get fed whether you work or not. You sleep warm whether you work or not. The work is for learning, not for earning. You see the difference? Rosemary's eyes filled with tears.
"Aunt Martha said—"
Your aunt was wrong. About everything. And one day, when this is all over, I hope you understand just how wrong she was.
Rosemary wiped her eyes, picked up her fork, started eating, slower this time, like she was trying to remember how people were supposed to do it.
Eli let her eat in peace. When she was finished, he stood. Come on, I'll show you around. He took her through the cabin first. Kitchen, sitting room, his bedroom, her bedroom, the small washroom out back. Then out to the barn. The morning was bright and bitter cold. Snow covered everything in white, and the sun made it glare so bright Rosemary had to squint. This here's Molly. Eli patted the big draft horse's neck. She's gentle as they come. Won't hurt you even if you startle her. Rosemary reached out a tentative hand, touched Molly's nose. She's soft. That she is. This one's Biscuit. He pointed to the smaller mare. She's got some spirit to her, but she respects anyone who respects her. Rosemary nodded, taking it in. Chickens are over here. He led her to the coop.
A dozen hens clucked and scattered when they entered.
Every morning, you gather the eggs. Move slow. Talk soft. Don't make sudden movements. You understand?
Yes, sir.
Show me. Rosemary looked at him, surprised. Then she moved to the nearest nest, slow and careful, just like he'd said. Her small hand reached under the hen, who ruffled her feathers but didn't peck, and came out with a brown egg. Good. Eli handed her a basket. Fill it up. She worked through the coop, gathering eggs one by one. Her movements were tentative at first, then more confident. By the time she'd finished, 8 eggs sat in the basket. She held it up with something that might have been pride. I did it! You did. That's breakfast tomorrow, right there. Eli took the basket. Now, I'll show you the cow. They spent the morning that way. Eli teaching, Rosemary learning. How to milk Bess the Jersey cow. Her hands cramped, and the first try yielded barely a cup. But she didn't complain.
How to scatter feed for the chickens. How to check the horse's hooves for stones. By noon, Rosemary was exhausted, but her eyes were brighter than they'd been last night. Mr. Eli?
Yeah?
This work you're teaching me. She paused, choosing her words. Is it because you need help? Or because you're trying to keep me busy so I don't think about things?
Eli huffed a laugh. You're too smart for your own good. You know that?
Mommy used to say the same thing.
It's both, if I'm being honest. I do need help. This ranch is too much for one man, truth be told. But yeah, he looked at her. Busy hands make for a quieter mind. I learned that after Samuel died. When the grief got too heavy, I'd work until I couldn't think anymore. It helped. Rosemary nodded slowly.
Okay, I can do that.
Good girl. The hoofbeats came just after noon. Eli heard them first. Straightened from the fence he was mending and shaded his eyes against the sun. 2 riders, coming fast. Rosemary.
She looked up from the chicken coop, where she'd been practicing gathering eggs again. Get inside, now! Don't come out until I tell you. Her face went white. Is it? Go!
She ran. The cabin door slammed behind her. Eli walked to meet the riders. His rifle was inside, but he had his hunting knife on his belt. Not much against 2, but better than nothing. The riders cleared the rise. Eli's jaw tightened. Martha Aldridge sat astride a gray mare, her black dress stark against the snow. She was maybe 45, handsome in a hard way, with eyes like chips of flint. Beside her rode Sheriff Tom Hendricks, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. They stopped 10 feet from where Eli stood. Mr. Dawson. Martha's voice was honey over broken glass. I believe you have something that belongs to me. Don't see nothing of yours around here, ma'am. My niece, Rosemary Aldridge. She ran off 2 nights ago, and I have reason to believe she's hiding on your property.
What reason would that be? Tracks in the snow, leading straight here.
Eli didn't look back at the cabin, didn't let anything show on his face. Lot of tracks in the snow, could be anyone's. Mr. Dawson, Sheriff Hendricks shifted in his saddle. Mrs. Aldridge has legal custody of the girl. Signed papers from Judge Harrison in Helena. If the child is here, you're legally obligated to hand her over. Am I? Yes, sir, you are. Martha smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. The poor thing is disturbed, Mr. Dawson. Has been since her parents died. She tells lies, terrible lies, about the people trying to help her. I've done my best to provide a stable home, but she's difficult, ungrateful. She shook her head, sadly. I'm sure she's told you all sorts of stories. She's told me some things. And you believed her? Eli looked at Martha Aldridge, took his time with it, let the silence stretch. I believed the bruises on her neck, he said finally. I believe the burns on her hands. I believe the way she flinches every time a man raises his voice. Those don't lie, ma'am, even when people do. Martha's smile flickered, just for a second. The child hurts herself, for attention. The doctor in town can confirm. Which doctor? Dr. Whitmore? The one who drinks at your saloon every night? The one who owes you how much in gambling debts? Sheriff Hendricks looked uncomfortable. Martha's eyes went cold. I don't know what that child has told you, Mr. Dawson, but I'm her legal guardian, her only living family. The law is clear. The law is clear about beating children, too. I have never. Then you won't mind if Doc Sullivan comes out to examine her. Margaret Sullivan. The one who don't drink at your establishment and don't owe you nothing. Martha's hands tightened on her reins. Tom, her voice snapped. Do your job. Sheriff Hendricks looked at Eli, looked at the cabin, looked back at Martha.
Ma'am, maybe we should. The law is clear. Either this man produces my niece, or you arrest him for kidnapping. Those are the only 2 options. Eli stepped forward. Then I reckon you better arrest me, because that child ain't going anywhere with you. Not today, not ever. You can't just, I can and I am. Eli's voice dropped low. You want her? You get a court order. A real one, from a judge who ain't in your pocket. You bring that to my door, we'll talk. Until then, you're trespassing on my property, and I'm asking you to leave. Martha's face twisted. You're making a mistake, Mr. Dawson. A very serious mistake. I have friends in this town. Important friends. By the time I'm done, no one will buy your cattle. No one will sell you supplies. You'll be ruined. Martha jerked her horse around. Tom, we're leaving. She looked back at Eli, and her eyes promised murder. I'll have that court order by end of week, Mr. Dawson, and when I come back, I won't be asking. She rode off. The sheriff lingered. Eli, his voice was low. She ain't wrong about the law. Blood relation and legal papers, that carries weight. A lot of weight. I know. You sure about this? That woman's got reach, money, influence. She could make your life hell. She's already making that child's life hell. Somebody's got to stop her. Hendricks was quiet for a moment. I'll do what I can. Slow things down. Give you time to build a case. He tipped his hat. But I can't hold her off forever. You got maybe a week before this goes before a judge. Then I better make that. Rosemary was huddled in the corner, knees pulled to her chest, shaking. Is she gone? For now. She's coming back, isn't she? Eli knelt in front of her. Yeah, she's coming back. With papers. With the law. The hand of a man who'd already fought one battle for her and was promising to fight more. Slowly, she reached out. Her small fingers closed around his. I'm with you, Mr. Eli. By the fourth, she'd figured out the rhythm of milking Bess, her small hands working the teats with a patience that surprised him. By the fifth, she was splitting kindling with a hatchet he'd cut down to fit her grip. You're a natural, Eli told her one morning, watching her stack the wood in neat piles by the door. Mama always said I was good with my hands. Rosemary wiped sweat from her forehead. Said I could learn anything if someone showed me once. Your mama was right. Rosemary paused, looked at him with those two old eyes. Mr. Eli, can I ask you something? Go ahead. Why do you keep teaching me things? I mean, if Aunt Martha's coming back with papers, if the judge is going to give me to her anyway, why bother? Eli set down the harness he'd been mending. Because what's right don't change based on what's likely. You understand? Rosemary shook her head. Means I'm going to keep teaching you, keep feeding you, keep treating you like you matter, because you do matter. What happens next, that's for the law to decide. But how I treat you today, that's for me to decide. And I decided the night I found you. Rosemary's lower lip trembled. Nobody ever talked to me like that before. Then everybody before was wrong. She went back to stacking wood, but Eli caught the small smile she tried to hide. That afternoon, Doc Margaret Sullivan rode out from town. She was a woman of 53, gray-streaked hair pulled back severe, hands steady as stone from 30 years of delivering babies and setting bones. She'd been the only doctor in Copper Creek for 2 decades, and she didn't take nonsense from anyone. Eli met her at the porch. Margaret. Eli. She dismounted, bag in hand. Sheriff Hendricks told me you've... The week that followed was the longest of Elijah Dawson's life. He woke before dawn every morning, rifle within arm's reach, ears straining for hoofbeats. Every creak of the cabin, every gust rattling the windows, made his hand twitch toward the weapon. Rosemary noticed. You ain't sleepin', she said on the third morning, watching him pour coffee with hands that shook slightly from exhaustion. I'm fine. You're lying. I can tell when grown folks lie. They get this look. Eli almost smiled. What look? Like they're trying real hard to believe what they're saying. She picked up her egg basket. You don't gotta pretend for me, Mr. Eli. I know she's coming back. Yeah, she is. And you're scared. Eli set down the coffee pot, looked at this 9-year-old girl who'd walked through hell and come out the other side still able to read people better than most adults. I ain't scared of her,
he said slowly. I'm scared of failing you. Rosemary was quiet for a long moment.
Then she crossed the kitchen and did something she'd never done before. She hugged him. Quick and fierce, her thin arms wrapping around his waist for just a second before she pulled back. "You ain't gonna fail me," she said. "You're the first person who even tried." She grabbed her basket and headed for the chicken coop, leaving Eli standing in the kitchen with something burning in his chest that felt almost like hope. By the fourth day, Rosemary could gather eggs without startling a single hen. The rust-colored one with a crooked tail feather, she'd named her Penny, would eat grain right from her palm. "She trusts me," Rosemary said, wonderment in her voice. "Animals know who's safe," Eli told her. "They can smell fear, but they can smell kindness too." "Can people?" "Some can. The good ones." Rosemary stroked Penny's feathers. "Aunt Martha's chickens always ran from me. I thought it was because I was bad." "You ain't bad, Rosemary. You never were." She looked up at him with tears in her eyes. "Then why did she treat me like I was?" Eli knelt so they were eye level. "Because some people are broken inside, and they try to break everything around them so they don't feel so alone in it. That's about her, not about you. You understand?" Rosemary nodded slowly. "I think so." "Good. Now finish up. We got more to do before noon." She went back to work, but Eli caught her whispering to Penny as she moved to the next nest, telling the chicken she was a good girl, that she was safe now. He had to turn away so she wouldn't see his eyes watering. On the fifth morning, Doc Margaret Sullivan rode out from town. Eli heard the hoofbeats and had his rifle in hand before he reached the porch. But it was just one rider, and when she cleared the rise, he let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "Margaret!" "Eli." She dismounted, medical bag in hand. Her gray hair was pulled back severe, and her eyes missed nothing. "Sheriff Hendricks said you've got a situation." "That's one word for it." "He also said Martha Aldridge is threatening to ruin anyone who helps you." Eli's jaw tightened. "She got to you already?" "She tried." Doc Sullivan's smile was thin and sharp. "Sent one of her boys to my office yesterday. Said it would be a shame if people started going to Doc Whitmore instead of me, if my practice dried up." "And?" "And I told him to tell his boss that I've been doctoring this town since before she showed up, and I'll be doctoring it long after she's gone." Then I threw him out in his ear. Despite everything, Eli laughed. "That's the Margaret Sullivan I remember." "Damn right." She looked toward the cabin. "Now where's this child I keep hearing about?" Rosemary stood in the doorway, wary as a rabbit ready to bolt. "It's okay," Eli called. "This is Doc Sullivan. She's a friend. She's here to help." "Help how?" Doc Sullivan stepped forward slowly, the way you'd approach a skittish animal. "I need to look at your injuries, child. Document them proper. Write down what I see so a judge can read it." Rosemary's hand went to her throat. "You mean the bruises?" "And the burns, and anything else that woman did to you." Sullivan's voice softened. "I know it's hard, showing someone what's been done to you. But this evidence could be the difference between going back to her and staying free. You understand?" Rosemary looked at Eli. He nodded. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll show you." They went inside. Sullivan examined Rosemary at the kitchen table, her touch gentle but thorough. She measured the bruises on the girl's neck, noted their shape and color. She looked at the burns on her hands, old and new, and wrote down everything in a small leather journal. "Turn around for me, child." Rosemary hesitated. Her eyes darted to Eli. "I can step out if you need," he offered. "No," her voice was small. "Stay, please."
She turned around and lifted the back of her shirt. Eli's stomach dropped. Scars, dozens of them, thin white lines crisscrossing her back like a map of pain. Some old and faded, some newer, still pink and raised. Jesus Christ, Eli breathed. Doc Sullivan's pen stopped moving. For a moment, even she couldn't speak. "These are from a belt," she said finally, her voice carefully controlled. "Some of them are months old. Some are—" she paused. "Some are years old, before her parents died." Rosemary's whole body went rigid. "It wasn't just your aunt," Sullivan said quietly. "Was it?" Silence. "Rosemary," Eli's voice cracked. "Who else?" The girl's shoulders started to shake. She pulled her shirt down and turned around, tears streaming down her face. "Uncle Vernon," she whispered. "Aunt Martha's husband. He died 2 years ago. But before that—" She couldn't finish. Eli's hands curled into fists. "Did he hit me when I visited. Said I was too loud, too messy, too much trouble." She wiped her nose with her sleeve. "When my parents found out, they stopped letting me go there. That's why Aunt Martha hates me. She blames me for Vernon leaving." "Leaving?" "He ran off, after my parents threatened to tell the sheriff what he did." Rosemary's voice went flat. 2 months later, they found him dead in a ravine. Horse threw him, they said. But Aunt Martha always looked at me like it was my fault. Like I killed him just by telling the truth. Doc Sullivan and Eli exchanged a look. "Child," Sullivan said carefully, "did your aunt ever say anything about how her husband really died?" "Once, when she was drunk." Rosemary's hands twisted in her lap. "She said some people get what they deserve, and some people make sure they get it." The cabin went dead silent. Eli felt cold spread through his chest. If Martha Aldridge had killed her own husband, if she was capable of that, then Rosemary was in more danger than he'd imagined. "We need to tell the sheriff," he said. "Tell him what?" Sullivan replied. "The drunken ramblings of a woman repeated by a traumatized child? That's not evidence. That's hearsay." "Then what do we do?" "We build the case we can build." Sullivan held up her journal. "I've got documentation of sustained abuse, burns, bruises, scarring consistent with years of violence. That's enough to challenge custody." "Is it enough to win?" Sullivan hesitated. "Honestly, I don't know. Martha's got money, connections. The judge in Helena owes her favors. Then we need more." "Like what?" Eli thought for a moment. "Her parents, Rosemary's parents. They knew what Martha was. They kept Rosemary away from her for a reason. They're dead. But maybe they left something behind. Letters, a diary, something that proves they didn't want Martha anywhere near their daughter." Rosemary looked up. "Mama had a journal. She wrote in it every night." Eli's heart jumped. "Where is it?" "I don't know. When the fire happened, everything burned, but—" She stopped. "Papa kept important papers in a lockbox, buried under the big oak tree behind our cabin, in case of fire." "Did your aunt know about it?" "No. Papa only told me. Said it was our secret." Eli was already reaching for his coat. "Margaret, can you stay with her?" "Where are you going?" "To dig up that lockbox." He grabbed his rifle. "If there's anything in there that proves what Martha is, we need it before she figures out it exists." Sullivan nodded. "Go, we'll be fine." Eli paused at the door, looked back at Rosemary. "You did good, telling us all that. I know it wasn't easy." "Is it going to help?" "I think so. I hope so." "Mr. Eli?" Her voice caught. "Be careful.
Aunt Martha's got people everywhere.
I know.
That's why I'm going now, before she knows I'm coming. He rode out into the gray morning, pushing his horse hard. The Aldridge homestead was 6 miles south, past Miller's Creek and through a stretch of pine forest that locals called the Devil's Fingers, for the way the trees bent in the constant wind. Nobody lived out there now. The fire had taken the cabin and the barn both, leaving nothing but charred foundations and bitter memories. Eli found the oak tree easy enough. It was the only one that had survived the fire, standing alone in the middle of the destruction, like a gravestone. He dismounted and started digging. The ground was frozen solid. Every strike of the shovel sent shockwaves up his arms, made his shoulders scream in protest. He'd been digging for 20 minutes when the shovel hit metal. He cleared away the last of the dirt and pulled out a tin lockbox, rusted but intact. Inside, he found what he was looking for. Letters, a stack of them, tied with a faded ribbon. And beneath them, a leather journal with Margaret Aldridge written on the cover in flowing script, Rosemary's mother's journal. Eli's hands shook as he opened it. The last entry was dated September 3rd, 2 days before the fire. I fear for Rosemary's future. If anything happens to Thomas and me, Martha will take her. I know she will. And God help my daughter if she does. That woman is not capable of love. She proved that with Vernon, and she'll prove it again with my child. I've written to Judge Crawford in Helena, begging him to ensure Rosemary goes to the Brennan family in Missouri if we die. Thomas's cousins. Good people. Kind people. Anyone but Martha. Eli read the words twice. 3 times. Then he noticed something else at the bottom of the lockbox. A folded document with an official seal. A will. Thomas and Margaret Aldridge's last will and testament, dated August 15th of that year. In the event of our deaths, we hereby declare that our daughter Rosemary Ann Aldridge shall not be placed in the care of Martha Aldridge under any circumstances. Her history of cruelty and instability makes her unfit to raise a child. Instead, we request that Rosemary be placed with the family of Elijah Dawson, our neighbor and trusted friend, or any other suitable guardian approved by the court. Eli read his own name and felt the world tilt beneath his feet. They'd named him. Rosemary's parents had specifically named him as a suitable guardian, and Martha Aldridge had buried that will, hidden it, pretended it didn't exist so she could claim custody. She'd stolen Rosemary, and Eli had the proof. He shoved everything back into the lockbox, mounted his horse, and rode for home like the devil himself was chasing him. He was halfway there when he heard the gunshot. The sound cracked through the cold air, sharp and unmistakable, coming from the direction of his ranch. Eli kicked his horse into a gallop. He cleared the last ridge and saw smoke rising from his property. Not his cabin, the barn. Flames licked at the roof, orange against the gray sky. And in the yard, 3 figures. Doc Sullivan on the ground, clutching her arm, blood on the snow around her. Rosemary in the grip of a man Eli recognized, one of Martha Aldridge's hired hands. Big, mean, ugly scar across his cheek. And Martha herself, standing there like she owned the place, a pistol in her hand. "Let her go!" Eli roared, riding in hard. Martha turned, smiled. "Mr. Dawson, how nice of you to join us." Eli dismounted, rifle raised. "I said let her go." "Or what? You'll shoot me?" Martha laughed. "In front of witnesses? That would make things very simple for my lawyer." "Mr. Eli!" Rosemary screamed. She was fighting against the hired hand, kicking and biting, but he was too strong. "She shot Doc Sullivan! She's gonna take me back!" Hush, child. Martha's voice went cold.
You've caused enough trouble. Eli's finger tightened on the trigger. Margaret, you okay?
Bullet grazed my arm. Sullivan's voice was strained but steady. I'll live. Don't do anything stupid, Eli. Listen to the doctor. Martha stepped closer. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to put down that rifle. You're going to let me take my niece. And you're going to forget any of this ever happened. And if I don't, then I'll tell the sheriff you attacked me, that you've been holding Rosemary prisoner, that you shot poor Dr. Sullivan yourself when she tried to rescue the child. Martha's smile widened. Who do you think they'll believe? A respectable businesswoman with friends in high places? Or a grieving old hermit who's been living alone for 4 years? Eli's blood ran cold. She'd planned this, all of it. You'll never get away with it. I already have, multiple times. Martha's eyes glittered. You think Rosemary's the first problem I've made disappear? You think my husband really fell off that horse by accident? Rosemary went still. You killed Uncle Vernon? He was going to ruin me, going to tell everyone what I'd done, how I disciplined you. He grew a conscience at the worst possible moment, Martha shrugged. So I removed the problem, just like I'll remove this one. You're confessing to murder. Eli's voice was deadly calm. In front of witnesses. Witnesses? Martha laughed. A wounded woman and a lying child? Please. By the time anyone investigates, you'll be dead, she'll be back where she belongs, and Dr. Sullivan will have learned to keep her mouth shut. She raised the pistol, aimed it at Eli's chest. Goodbye, Mr. Dawson. Thank you for making this so easy. Rosemary screamed. Eli saw Martha's finger tighten on the trigger. And then a shot rang out, but not from Martha's gun. Martha Aldridge staggered, looked down at the red bloom spreading across her shoulder, then collapsed into the snow. Behind her, lowering his rifle, stood Sheriff Tom Hendricks. Nobody move, he said quietly. I heard every word. The hired hand released Rosemary and bolted for his horse. Hendricks let him go. He had bigger concerns. Rosemary ran to Eli and threw herself into his arms. She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. You came back, she sobbed. You came back. I'll always come back. Eli held her tight. I promise. I'll always come back. Hendricks walked over to where Martha lay groaning in the snow. He kicked the pistol away from her hand and stood over her. Martha Aldridge, you're under arrest for the attempted murder of Dr. Margaret Sullivan and Elijah Dawson, for the murder of Vernon Aldridge, and for the abuse and unlawful imprisonment of a minor child. Martha spat blood. You can't prove any of that. Actually, Eli reached into his coat and pulled out the journal. I can prove all of it. Martha's face went white. Oh, and there's this. He held up the will. Signed by Thomas and Margaret Aldridge, naming me as Rosemary's guardian, specifically excluding you from her care. That's not legal. It's witnessed and notarized. I found it buried on their property, where you couldn't find it to destroy it. Martha started laughing, wild, unhinged. It doesn't matter. None of it matters. I have friends, powerful friends. Judge Harrison will throw out that will. Judge Harrison was arrested this morning, Hendricks said calmly. Corruption charges. Turns out he's been taking bribes from half the criminals in the territory. He smiled grimly. Including you. We found the records. All the color drained from Martha's face. The new judge arrives next week, Hendricks continued. Judge Catherine Whitmore. No relation to your pet doctor. Clean record. Reputation for protecting children. He hauled Martha to her feet. I don't think she's going to be very sympathetic to your case. He dragged her toward his horse. This isn't over, Martha screamed. "You hear me, Dawson? This isn't over!" Eli watched them go. Rosemary still clutched against his chest. "It's over," he said quietly. "It's finally over." Doc Sullivan limped over, holding her wounded arm. "Eli, the barn!" He looked up. The flames had spread. Half the roof was gone now, and the horses were screaming inside. "Rosemary, stay with Margaret." "But stay here!" He ran. The heat hit him like a wall. Smoke burned his eyes, filled his lungs. He could barely see 3 feet in front of him. "Molly! Biscuit!" The horses screamed again. He followed the sound, found them trapped in their stalls, eyes rolling white with terror. He threw open Molly's gate. She bolted past him, nearly knocking him down. Biscuit was worse. The fire had reached her stall, flames licking at the hay around her hooves. She was rearing, kicking, too panicked to find the open door. "Easy, girl, easy." Eli grabbed a blanket, threw it over her head to block her vision. She fought him, but he held on, talking soft and steady. Come on, this way." He led her out, step by step, through the smoke and the flames and the falling timbers. They burst into the open air just as the roof collapsed behind them. Eli fell to his knees in the snow, coughing, gasping. Biscuit stood beside him, trembling but alive. Rosemary ran over. Mr. Eli, are you okay?" He looked up at her, soot-covered, exhausted, but alive. "Yeah, sweetheart, I'm okay." She threw her arms around him again. "I thought you were going to die. I ain't going anywhere." He held her close. "I promised, didn't I? I'll always come back." They stayed like that for a long moment, kneeling in the snow while the barn burned behind them, while the last of Martha Aldridge's evil went up in smoke. Then Eli pulled back, looked Rosemary in the eyes. "I found something today, at your parents' place." "The lockbox?" "Yeah." He pulled out the journal. "Your mama's journal, and their will." Rosemary took the journal with trembling hands, opened it, touched the handwriting inside. "Mama," she whispered. "She loved you, Rosemary, more than anything, and she wanted you safe." He paused. "They named me in the will, your parents. They wanted me to take care of you if anything happened to them." Rosemary looked up. Tears streamed down her face. "They knew? They knew you'd be good to me?" "I reckon they saw something in me I didn't even see myself." His voice broke. "I'm going to honor that trust, Rosemary. I'm going to raise you right. Give you everything they would have wanted you to have." Rosemary threw her arms around his neck. "I love you, Mr. Eli." The words hit him like a punch to the heart. 4 years of grief, 4 years of emptiness, 4 years of thinking he'd never feel anything again. And here was this broken little girl saying the 3 words he'd forgotten how to hear. "I love you too, sweetheart." His voice cracked. "I love you too." Doc Sullivan cleared her throat behind them. "Not to interrupt, but I'm bleeding pretty heavily here. Think we might want to get back to town?" Eli laughed. Actually laughed, for the first time in longer than he could remember. "Yeah, Margaret, let's get you fixed up." He helped Sullivan onto her horse, then lifted Rosemary up behind him on his own mount. The cabin still stood untouched. The barn was a loss, but barns could be rebuilt. Everything that mattered had survived. As they rode toward town, Rosemary pressed her face against his back. "Mr. Eli?" "Yeah?" "When the judge comes next week, what's going to happen?" "The judge is going to look at the evidence, the will, the journal, Doc Sullivan's report, everything Martha confessed to." He paused.
And then she's going to make it official.
Make what official? Eli smiled. That you're my daughter, legal and proper, for good. Rosemary's arms tightened around him. Promise? I promise. They rode on toward town, toward the future, toward the family they'd both thought they'd lost forever. Behind them, the barn crumbled into ash and memory. Ahead of them, something new was beginning. The week before Judge Catherine Whitmore arrived was the hardest Rosemary had ever known. Not because of fear, not anymore. Martha Aldridge sat in the county jail, her shoulder bandaged, her powerful friends suddenly too busy to return her letters. Sheriff Hendricks had made sure of that, spreading word of her confession to every corner of the territory. No, the hardness came from something else entirely. Hope. Rosemary had learned long ago that hope was dangerous. Hope meant expecting good things, and expecting good things meant being destroyed when they didn't come. She'd stopped hoping the night her parents died, had buried that part of herself so deep she thought it was gone forever. But now it kept creeping back. Every morning when Eli made her breakfast. Every evening when he read to her by the fire. Every time he called her sweetheart, or touched her hair, or looked at her like she mattered. Hope was terrifying. "You're quiet today," Eli said on the fourth morning, watching her push eggs around her plate. "Just thinking." "About the hearing?" Rosemary nodded. Eli set down his coffee. "What's worrying you?" "What if something goes wrong?" The words tumbled out before she could stop them. "What if the judge doesn't believe us? What if Martha's friends find a way to get her out? What if—" "Hey." Eli reached across the table and took her hand. "Look at me." She looked. "We've got your mama's journal. We've got the will. We've got Doc Sullivan's report and Sheriff Hendricks's testimony. We've got everything we need." But nothing." His voice was firm. "Martha Aldridge is finished. The only question now is how long she spends in prison." "And me?" Rosemary's voice cracked. "What happens to me?" "What do you want to happen?" The question caught her off guard. Nobody had ever asked her what she wanted, not once in her entire life. "I want to stay here," she whispered, "with you. Forever." Eli squeezed her hand. "Then that's what's going to happen." "You promise?" "I promise." Rosemary wanted to believe him, wanted it more than she'd ever wanted anything. But the scared part of her, the part that had learned to expect disappointment, wouldn't quite let go. "What if you change your mind?" she asked quietly. "What if you decide I'm too much trouble? What if—" "Rosemary." Eli's voice cut through her spiral. "I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to hear it. Really hear it." She nodded. 4 years ago, I buried my son, Samuel. He was 6 years old, and he was everything to me. When he died, I wanted to die too. I stopped living, just went through the motions, day after day, waiting for the end. Rosemary's eyes filled with tears. Then you showed up in my barn, half frozen, starving, expecting nothing but cruelty from everyone you met. He paused. And something in me woke up, something I thought was dead forever. What? The part of me that wanted to protect something, care for something, love something. His voice broke. You brought that back, Rosemary. You gave me a reason to keep going, and I'll be damned if I let anyone take that away. Rosemary couldn't speak. Tears streamed down her face. So no, Eli continued. I ain't gonna change my mind. I ain't gonna decide you're too much trouble. You're stuck with me now, kid, for better or worse. She launched herself across the table and into his arms. The chair toppled. Her plate crashed to the floor. Neither of them cared. "I love you, Papa," she sobbed. It was the first time she'd called him that. Eli held her so tight she could barely breathe. "I love you too, Rosie. I love you too." They stayed like that for a long time, crying together in the kitchen while the sun rose outside and the coffee went cold on the table. Finally, Eli pulled back, wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "All right," he said gruffly. "Enough of that. We got chores to do." "Yes, Papa." Rosemary smiled through her tears. The word felt strange and wonderful on her tongue. "Can I feed Penny first?" "Course you can. But then we're mucking out the temporary stalls, and I ain't doing all the work myself." "Yes, Papa." She grabbed her coat and ran outside, lighter than she'd felt in months. Eli watched her go. Papa. He'd never thought he'd hear that word again. The temporary shelter they'd built for the horses wasn't much, just a lean-to against the cabin wall, covered with tarps. But it would hold until spring, when they could rebuild the barn proper. Molly and Biscuit seemed content enough, and the chickens had been moved into the root cellar, where they complained constantly about the indignity of it all. Rosemary had taken to the work like she'd been born to it. Her hands were calloused now, her arms stronger. She could haul water buckets that would have been impossible a month ago. More than that, she'd started to stand taller, speak louder, meet people's eyes instead of staring at the ground. She was becoming herself again. Or maybe, for the first time. On the 6th day, they had visitors. Eli heard the wagon before he saw it. Multiple horses. His hand went to his rifle by instinct, but when the party crested the ridge, he relaxed. It was half the town. Pastor William Cross drove the lead wagon, his white hair wild in the wind. Behind him came the Hendersons, the Millers, the O'Briens, and a dozen other families Eli had known for years but barely spoken to since Samuel's death. "What in the world?" he muttered. Rosemary ran up beside him. "Who are all those people?" "Neighbors, I think." Pastor Cross pulled his wagon to a stop and climbed down with a grunt. "Eli Dawson, you look like you've seen a ghost." "Might as well have. What's all this?" "This," Cross gestured at the convoy behind him, "is what happens when a man does the right thing, and the community finally wakes up to notice." The other wagons pulled up. People started climbing down, unloading supplies. Lumber, tools, nails, food, blankets. "We heard about your barn," Martha Henderson said, carrying a basket of bread toward the cabin, "and about what you did for this little girl." "About time someone stood up to that Aldridge woman," her husband added, shouldering a stack of planks. "Should have happened years ago." Eli was speechless. Rosemary tugged at his sleeve. "Papa, what's happening?" "I think," his voice caught, "I think they're helping us." Pastor Cross put a hand on Eli's shoulder. "You've been alone too long, Eli. Shut yourself away after Samuel passed. We all understood, but we should have pushed harder. Should have made you accept help whether you wanted it or not." "I didn't want—" "I know. But here's the thing about community," Cross smiled. "It ain't about want. It's about need. And right now, you need a barn. So we're building you one. I can't ask you to—" "You didn't ask. We're telling." Cross nodded toward where the men were already laying out the foundation. "Now either pick up a hammer or get out of the way. We've got work to do." By noon, the skeleton of a new barn was rising from the ashes of the old. Rosemary worked alongside the women, carrying water to the workers, holding boards steady while they were nailed into place. The Henderson children, 2 boys and a girl around her age, tried to talk to her at first, but she was too shy to respond. Until the eldest boy, Thomas, made a comment about her scars. "Those burns on your hands," he said, pointing. "They're ugly." Rosemary flinched, drew her hands back against her chest. "Thomas Henderson!" His mother's voice cracked like a whip. "You apologize right now!" It's okay, Rosemary said quietly. He's right. They are ugly.
No. Eli's voice came from behind her. Everyone turned. They're not ugly. They're brave. He walked over and took Rosemary's hands in his, held them up so everyone could see. These scars came from trying to save her parents from a burning building. She was 7 years old, and she ran into the fire to try to pull her mother out. His voice rang across the worksite. That ain't ugly. That's the bravest thing I've ever heard of. Rosemary's eyes went wide.
And these, he touched the newer burns, the ones Martha had given her. These came from surviving a monster, from living through things no child should ever have to live through. These are battle scars, proof that she's stronger than anyone who tried to break her. Thomas Henderson looked at the ground, face red with shame. I'm sorry, he mumbled. I didn't know. Now you do. Eli's voice softened slightly. So maybe next time, instead of pointing out someone's scars, you ask them how they got so brave. He squeezed Rosemary's hands and walked back to his work. The silence stretched for a long moment. Then Mrs. Henderson spoke up. Well, I think that calls for a break. Who wants lemonade? The tension dissolved. People went back to their tasks. But something had shifted. Thomas Henderson walked up to Rosemary, still looking at the ground. I really am sorry, he said. That was mean. Rosemary studied him for a moment. Then she smiled, small but real. It's okay. You didn't know. Can I... He hesitated. Can I see them? The scars? Not to make fun, I just want to understand. Rosemary held out her hands. Thomas looked at them for a long time. You really ran into a fire? I had to try. That's amazing. His voice was awed. I don't think I could do that. I'd be too scared. I was scared too, but being scared and doing it anyway, that's what brave means. Thomas grinned. My pa says the same thing. Maybe you're not so different from us after all. Maybe not. Want to help me carry water? It's boring doing it alone. Rosemary looked at Eli. He nodded, smiling. Sure, she said. I'd like that. They ran off together, and Eli watched them go with a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the winter sun. By evening, the barn frame was complete. The community gathered around a bonfire someone had built, passing around food and drink, telling stories and laughing. Rosemary sat with the Henderson children, shyly at first, then with growing confidence as they included her in their games. Pastor Cross found Eli standing apart from the group, watching. You did a good thing, Cross said quietly. They did a good thing. I just watched. I'm not talking about the barn. Cross nodded toward Rosemary. I'm talking about her. You gave her back her life, Eli. She gave me back mine. That's how it works sometimes. Two broken people find each other, and somehow the pieces fit together better than they did before. Eli was quiet for a moment. Do you think the hearing will go okay? I think Judge Whitmore has a reputation for caring about children. And I think the evidence against Martha is overwhelming. Cross paused. But I also think it wouldn't hurt to have the whole town show up and testify to what kind of man you are. Eli looked at him sharply. You'd do that? I'd do more than that, Cross smiled. I've already written a letter to the judge. So has every family here tonight. By the time Catherine Whitmore walks into that courtroom, she'll have 30 testimonials about Elijah Dawson's character. Eli's throat tightened. I don't know what to say. Say you'll stop hiding from the people who care about you. Say you'll let us help. Eli swallowed hard. I'll try. That's all any of us can do. The night deepened. One by one, families loaded up their wagons and headed home, calling out goodbyes and promises to return tomorrow to finish the work. Finally, only Eli and Rosemary remained, standing by the dying bonfire. "Papa?" "Yeah?" "I never had friends before. Not really." Eli put his arm around her shoulders. "And now?" "Now I think maybe I could have some. If I'm brave enough." "You're the bravest person I know, Rosie. Don't ever doubt that." She leaned against him, and they watched the last embers glow. "The hearing's in 3 days," she said quietly. "I know. I'm scared." "Me too. But you said everything would be okay." "It will be." He looked down at her. "Being scared and doing it anyway, remember?" Rosemary smiled. "That's what brave means." "That's my girl." They walked back to the cabin together, and for the first time in a very long time, neither of them felt alone. The morning of the hearing dawned gray and cold. Eli dressed in his best suit, the one he'd worn to Samuel's funeral, the one he'd never thought he'd wear again. It smelled of cedar from the chest where it had been stored, and the sleeves were slightly too short. Rosemary stood in the kitchen, twisting her hands together. "What if I have to talk?" she asked. "In front of everyone? What if I freeze up?" "Then you freeze up, and we wait until you're ready, and you try again." Eli knelt in front of her. "There's no wrong way to do this, Rosie. Just tell the truth." "The truth is ugly." "The truth is necessary. And you're stronger than you think." She nodded, but her face was pale. They rode into town together, Rosemary sitting in front of Eli on Molly's back. The streets were unusually crowded for a weekday morning. People lined the sidewalks, watching them pass. "Why is everyone staring?" Rosemary whispered. "I think they're here for us." The courthouse was packed. Eli hadn't seen this many people in one place since the 4th of July celebration 3 years ago. Families filled the gallery. Pastor Cross sat in the front row with Doc Sullivan, whose arm was still in a sling. Sheriff Hendricks stood by the door, nodding as they entered. And there, at the defendant's table, sat Martha Aldridge. She looked diminished somehow, smaller. Her hair was lank and unwashed, her face gaunt from 2 weeks in jail. But her eyes were still sharp, still cruel. They locked onto Rosemary the moment she entered. Rosemary gripped Eli's hand so hard her knuckles went white. "Don't look at her," he murmured. "Look at me. Just me." They took their seats at the plaintiff's table. A young lawyer from Helena, arranged by Pastor Cross, shuffled papers beside them. "Mr. Dawson, Miss Aldridge." He nodded to each of them. "I'm confident in our case. Just answer honestly and let me handle the rest." The back door opened. Judge Catherine Whitmore entered. She was perhaps 60 years old, with silver hair and a face that had seen everything and been surprised by nothing. She walked with a cane, an old injury, Eli had heard, but there was nothing frail about her. She took her seat behind the bench and surveyed the room with sharp blue eyes. "This court is now in session. The matter before us is the custody of Rosemary Ann Aldridge, currently in the temporary care of Elijah Dawson, and the criminal charges against Martha Aldridge, including attempted murder, assault, child abuse, and—" She paused, looked at the papers. "Suspicion of murder in the death of Vernon Aldridge." A murmur ran through the crowd. Judge Whitmore silenced it with a look. "Let's begin." The prosecution went first. They presented Doc Sullivan's medical report, complete with photographs of Rosemary's injuries. They read excerpts from Margaret Aldridge's journal, her desperate words filling the courtroom with a mother's fear for her daughter's future. And then they presented the will. "This document," the prosecutor said, holding it up for the judge to see, "clearly states that Thomas and Margaret Aldridge did not want Martha Aldridge to have custody of their daughter under any circumstances.
They specifically named Elijah Dawson as a suitable guardian. Martha's lawyer jumped to his feet. Objection! That will was never filed with the court. Its authenticity cannot be verified. The signatures have been examined by a handwriting expert, the prosecutor replied calmly. They match other documents signed by Thomas and Margaret Aldridge. The notary seal is authentic. And, he smiled slightly, the document was found buried in a lockbox on the Aldridge property, exactly where Rosemary said her father told her he would keep important papers. Judge Whitmore examined the will for a long moment. The document appears legitimate. Objection overruled. Martha's face went pale. Then it was the defense's turn. Martha's lawyer tried everything. He claimed Rosemary was disturbed, prone to lies. He claimed Eli was an unstable hermit who had no business raising a child. He claimed the medical evidence was exaggerated, the journal entries taken out of context, the will a forgery. None of it stuck. Witness after witness took the stand. Pastor Cross testified to Eli's character. Doc Sullivan described Rosemary's injuries in clinical, devastating detail. Sheriff Hendricks recounted Martha's confession word for word. And then, finally, it was Rosemary's turn. She walked to the witness stand on legs that trembled, sat in the chair that was too big for her, looked out at the sea of faces watching her every move. Martha's eyes bored into her from across the room. "Miss Aldridge," the prosecutor said gently, "can you tell the court what your life was like living with your aunt?" Rosemary's voice came out as a whisper. "She hurt me." "Can you speak up, please?" "She hurt me," louder this time. "Every day. She hit me, burned me, made me work in the saloon. Didn't feed me unless I earned it." Her voice cracked. "She told me I was worthless, that nobody would ever want me, that I should be grateful she didn't throw me out in the snow to die." The courtroom was dead silent. "And Mr. Dawson?" the prosecutor asked. "What has your life been like with him?" Rosemary looked at Eli. Tears streamed down her face. "He found me in his barn. I was trying to find somewhere to die, and he—" She choked on the sob. "He gave me food, and a bed, and he taught me things, and he never hit me. Not once. He never called me worthless."
"What did he call you?" "Brave." Her voice broke completely. "He called me brave, and sweetheart, and—" She looked at Eli again, love shining through her tears. "And daughter." The gallery erupted. Judge Whitmore pounded her gavel. "Order! Order in the court!" When the noise finally died down, she turned to Rosemary. "Miss Aldridge, I have one question for you, and I want you to answer honestly, without thinking about what anyone else wants you to say." Rosemary nodded. "If this court grants Mr. Dawson custody, you will never have to see your aunt again. You will live with him, be raised by him, take his name if you choose. Is that what you want?" Rosemary didn't hesitate. "Yes, ma'am. More than anything." "And why is that?" "Because—" she wiped her eyes. "Because he's my papa. Maybe not by blood, but by everything that matters." Judge Whitmore was silent for a long moment. Then she smiled. "I think I've heard enough." She turned to face the courtroom. "In the matter of custody, this court finds in favor of Elijah Dawson. Rosemary Ann Aldridge is hereby placed in his permanent care, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails." Eli let out a breath he felt like he'd been holding for weeks. As for the criminal charges against Martha Aldridge, Whitmore's voice went hard. "This court finds the defendant guilty of assault, child abuse, and attempted murder. The charge of murder in the death of Vernon Aldridge will be referred to a criminal trial." Martha shot to her feet. "You can't do this. I have rights. I have—" "You have nothing.
Whitmore's voice cut like ice. You forfeited your rights the moment you laid hands on that child. Sheriff, please escort the defendant back to jail. She will be held without bail, pending her murder trial. Hendricks moved forward. Martha fought him, screaming obscenities, but he was stronger. He dragged her toward the door.
She twisted around, eyes wild with hate, and locked onto Rosemary one last time. "This isn't over," she shrieked. "You hear me? This isn't over. You'll pay for this. You'll—" The door slammed shut behind her. Silence. Then Rosemary was running, flying across the courtroom, and Eli caught her in his arms and held her while she sobbed against his chest. "It's over," he murmured into her hair. "It's really over." "I know." She pulled back, looking up at him with a smile so bright it hurt. "I know, Papa. I know." The crowd surged forward, hands slapping Eli's back, voices offering congratulations. Pastor Cross wiping his eyes, Doc Sullivan grimacing through happy tears. In the chaos, Judge Whitmore caught Eli's eye and nodded once. He nodded back. Then Rosemary grabbed his hand and pulled him toward the door. "Come on, Papa. Let's go home." Home. He'd almost forgotten what that word meant. But now, with this brave, broken, beautiful girl holding his hand and pulling him toward the future, he finally remembered. Home wasn't a place. It was the people you loved. And after 4 years of darkness, Elijah Dawson had finally found his way back to the light. The ride home from the courthouse felt different than any ride before. Rosemary sat in front of Eli on Molly's back. Her small body relaxed against his chest in a way it never had been. No tension, no fear, no waiting for the other shoe to drop. "Papa?" "Yeah?" "Is it really over? Like, truly over?" "Martha's in jail waiting for her murder trial. Judge Whitmore signed the custody papers. You're legally my daughter now." He squeezed her shoulder. "Yeah, Rosie. It's truly over." She was quiet for a moment. Then she laughed. Actually laughed, bright and clear, the sound of a child who had finally been set free. "I don't know what to do with that," she admitted. "I've been scared for so long, I don't know how to stop." "You don't have to stop all at once. Fear's a habit, just like anything else. Takes time to break." "How long did it take you? After Samuel?" The question hit him in the chest, but it didn't hurt the way it used to. "I'm still working on it," he said honestly. "But it gets easier, especially when you've got someone to work on it with." Rosemary twisted around to look at him. "You mean me?" "I mean you." She smiled, that new smile she'd been practicing, the one that reached her eyes, and turned back around. They crested the ridge and the homestead came into view. The new barn stood proud against the gray sky, its fresh lumber bright compared to the weathered cabin. The community had finished it 2 days ago, working from dawn to dusk while Eli and Rosemary prepared for the hearing. "It's beautiful," Rosemary breathed. "It'll weather to match the rest soon enough." "I don't want it to. I want it to stay bright so I can remember." "Remember what?" "That good things can happen. That people can be kind." She paused. "That I'm not alone anymore." Eli's throat tightened. He didn't trust himself to speak. They dismounted and led Molly into her new stall. Biscuit whinnied a greeting from the neighboring stall, and Rosemary laughed and fed her an apple from the barrel. "I'm going to check on Penny," she said. "Make sure she's okay after being in the root cellar so long." "Go on. I'll start supper." She ran off toward the chicken coop. They'd rebuilt that too, bigger and sturdier than before. And Eli watched her go with a feeling in his chest he'd almost forgotten. Pride. Not just for her, but in her. In who she was becoming.
He was turning toward the cabin when he heard hoofbeats. His hand went to his hip before he remembered he'd left his rifle inside. Old habits. The war had taught him to reach for a weapon first and ask questions later. But the rider who crested the ridge wasn't a threat. It was Sheriff Tom Hendricks. "Eli." Hendricks pulled up and dismounted, his face grave. "We need to talk." "What's wrong?" Martha Aldridge escaped. The words hit like a bucket of ice water. "What do you mean, escaped? She was in your jail, guarded." "She was." Hendricks ran a hand through his hair. "One of my deputies. Turns out she'd been paying him for months. He let her out an hour ago. By the time we realized what happened, she was gone." Eli's blood went cold. "Which direction?" "West, toward the mountains." Hendricks paused. "Or that's what she wants us to think. She could be anywhere by now." "Rosemary." Eli turned and started running. "Rosemary!" She emerged from the chicken coop, Penny tucked under one arm. "Papa? What's wrong?" "Get inside, now." "But now, Rosemary." She'd never heard that tone from him before. She ran. Eli grabbed his rifle from just inside the cabin door, checked that it was loaded. His hands were steady, but his heart pounded against his ribs. "I've got men searching," Hendricks said, following him. "Every road, every trail. She won't get far." "She doesn't need to get far. She just needs to get here. I'm leaving 2 deputies to guard your property. I'll be back with more men as soon as—" "Papa!" Rosemary's scream came from inside the cabin. Eli burst through the door. Martha Aldridge stood in the middle of the kitchen, a knife pressed against Rosemary's throat. She looked like something dragged up from hell. Her hair hung in matted clumps. Her jail dress was torn and filthy. A wild, desperate light burned in her eyes. "Drop the rifle," she said, "or I cut her." Eli froze. "Papa." Rosemary's voice was barely a whisper. Tears streamed down her face. "I'm sorry. She was already inside when I—" "Shut up." Martha pressed the knife harder. A thin line of red appeared on Rosemary's neck. "Drop it. Now." Eli let the rifle fall. "Kick it away." He kicked it. The rifle slid across the floor and came to rest against the far wall. "Good," Martha smiled. It was the most terrifying thing Eli had ever seen. "Now we can talk." "Let her go, Martha. This is between you and me." "Oh, no. No, no, no," Martha laughed, high and unhinged. "This has always been about her. This worthless, lying little brat who ruined everything." "She didn't ruin anything. You ruined yourself." "I had a life," Martha screamed. "A good life. Money, respect, power. And then her parents had to die. And she had to come to me with her crying and her needs and her constant, endless demands. She was a child who lost everything. She needed care. She needed to be useful. That's all I asked. Work hard, stay quiet, don't cause problems. Was that so much?" Martha's voice cracked. "But no, she had to tell her lies, had to make people think I was the monster." "You are a monster," Eli said quietly. Martha flinched. For a second, the knife wavered, then her eyes went hard again. "Maybe I am. Maybe that's what the world made me." She pulled Rosemary closer. "But I'm not going to prison. I'm not going to hang. And if I have to take this brat with me to hell, so be it." "Martha!" Hendricks's voice came from the doorway. He'd drawn his pistol, but there was no clean shot. "Put down the knife. This doesn't have to end badly." "It already ended badly, Sheriff. The moment that judge ruled against me." Martha laughed again. "But I can make it worse. For everyone." "What do you want?" "I want a horse, supplies, a head start." She looked at Eli.
And I want him to know what it feels like to lose everything, the way I did.
You didn't lose anything. You threw it away.
I lost my husband, Martha screamed. Spittle flew from her lips. I lost the only person who ever understood me, and it was because of her.
You killed Vernon, Eli said. You admitted it.
I set him free. He was going to betray me, going to tell everyone about our discipline methods. He grew weak, soft, because of her. Martha's knife hand trembled. So yes, I killed him, and I'd do it again.
Then you're already damned. Killing Rosemary won't change that.
No, but it'll hurt you.
Martha's smile was death itself.
And right now, that's enough. Martha.
Rosemary's voice was small but steady.
Can I say something?
What could you possibly have to say?
I forgive you.
The words hung in the air. Martha stared at her.
What? I forgive you. For everything. The beatings, the burns, the starvation.
Rosemary's voice didn't waver.
You're broken inside. Mama's journal said so. She pitied you.
Your mother didn't know anything about me.
She knew you were unhappy. She knew Uncle Vernon hurt you before you started hurting others. She knew...
Rosemary paused.
She knew you were a victim once too.
Martha's face contorted. Something shifted behind her eyes. Pain. Old pain, buried so deep it had turned to poison.
Stop it. I'm not trying to trick you. I'm just saying what's true.
Rosemary's tears fell freely now.
You hurt me so bad. You made me want to die. But I don't hate you. I just feel sorry for you.
Shut up.
Because you'll never have what I have now. A papa who loves me. A home. People who care.
Rosemary looked at her aunt with something that might have been compassion.
You'll spend the rest of your life running. Alone. And that's worse than any prison.
Martha's hand shook violently. The knife wavered.
You think you're better than me? She whispered. No. I think I'm luckier than you. That's all.
For one long, terrible moment, nobody breathed. Then Martha Aldridge did something nobody expected. She started to cry. Great, heaving sobs that racked her whole body. The knife fell from her fingers and clattered to the floor.
She released Rosemary and stumbled backward, sliding down the wall until she sat in a heap, weeping like a child. I didn't want to be this, she choked out. I didn't want any of this. Vernon, he made me, and then he was gone, and I had nothing but her, and I couldn't.
Rosemary stepped toward her.
Rosie, no.
Eli grabbed for her arm. But Rosemary pulled free. She walked to where her aunt sat broken on the floor, and she knelt beside her.
I know, she said softly. I know you're hurting.
Martha looked up, face streaked with tears and snot.
How can you, after everything Because holding on to hate is too heavy.
Rosemary took her aunt's hand, the hand that had hit her, burned her, nearly killed her, and held it gently.
And I'm tired of carrying heavy things.
Martha broke completely then. She collapsed forward, sobbing into Rosemary's shoulder. And the 9-year-old girl, who had every reason to hate her, simply held her and let her cry. Eli watched with tears running down his own face. He'd seen a lot of things in his 54 years. War, death, loss, cruelty beyond measure. But he'd never seen anything as powerful as this. A child who had been tortured by this woman, offering her forgiveness, offering her grace, offering her the one thing she'd never given anyone else: mercy. Sheriff Hendricks lowered his pistol slowly. "I'll be damned," he murmured. After a long time, Martha's sobs quieted. She pulled back from Rosemary, looking at her like she was seeing her for the first time.
"I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." "I know. I don't deserve—" "Nobody deserves forgiveness. That's why it's called grace." Rosemary stood, her small hand still holding Martha's. "But you still have to face what you did. You know that, right?" Martha nodded slowly. "I know. Will you go with the sheriff? Without fighting?" "Yes." Martha's voice was hoarse but clear. "Yes, I'll go." Hendricks moved forward carefully. Martha let him pull her to her feet, let him put the handcuffs on her wrists without resistance. At the door, she turned back one last time. "Rosemary." "Yes?" "Your mother was right about me. I was a victim once, a long time ago." She paused. "But I made choices, bad ones, and I have to live with them." "Maybe prison will give you time to think about different choices." Martha almost smiled. "Maybe it will." Hendricks let her out. The sound of hoofbeats faded into the distance. Eli and Rosemary stood alone in the kitchen. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Eli crossed the room and pulled Rosemary into his arms. "How?" he asked, his voice rough. "How did you do that?" "I don't know." She was shaking now, the adrenaline wearing off. I looked at her, and I saw how broken she was, and I couldn't hate her anymore. I couldn't." "You're stronger than anyone I've ever known." "I learned it from you." He held her tighter. "No, sweetheart. I think you're teaching me." They stood there for a long time, holding each other while the afternoon light faded outside. That night, after supper, after the dishes were washed and the fire was banked, Rosemary asked to see Samuel's harmonica. Eli got it down from the mantel, where it had sat untouched for 4 years. The metal was tarnished, but when he blew into it experimentally, the notes came out clear. "Will you teach me to play?" Rosemary asked. "I don't know how. That was Samuel's thing. He taught himself from a book." "What book?" Eli went to the chest in the corner, dug through old blankets and forgotten keepsakes until he found it. A slim volume, pages worn soft from use. "How to Play the Harmonica, a Beginner's Guide." Rosemary took it reverently. "Can I have this? To learn?" "Course you can. Samuel would have wanted someone to use it." She opened the book, studied the diagrams, lifted the harmonica to her lips. The first note was terrible, a wheeze more than a sound. She tried again, better this time. Again, a clear note ringing in the quiet cabin. "I did it!" She looked up, face shining. "Did you hear? I made a real note." "I heard." Eli's voice was thick. "Keep practicing. You'll be playing songs in no time." She went back to the book, brow furrowed in concentration. Eli watched her, his son's harmonica in her hands, his son's book in her lap, his son's room waiting for her down the hall. It should have hurt. A month ago, it would have torn him apart. But now, somehow, it didn't. Samuel was gone. That grief would never fully heal. But seeing Rosemary with his things, learning what he had learned, keeping his memory alive in a way Eli never could have on his own, it felt less like loss and more like continuation. Like Samuel's light, passed on to someone new. "Papa?" "Yeah?" "Thank you. For everything." "Don't thank me. You saved yourself today. I just watched." "That's not true." Rosemary set down the harmonica. "You saved me the night you found me. You chose me when you didn't have to. Everything that happened after, that's because of you." "It's because of both of us." "Then we're a good team." Eli smiled.
Yeah, Rosie, we're a good team. She yawned hugely, the exhaustion of the day finally catching up with her. Bed, Eli said. We've got chores tomorrow, and you're going to need your strength. Yes, Papa. She stood, tucking the harmonica book under her arm. At the door to her room, Samuel's room, her room now, she paused. Papa? Yeah? I'm glad I stole your eggs that night. Eli laughed. The sound surprised him. It felt rusty, unfamiliar, but right. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. She disappeared into her room. The door closed softly. Eli sat by the fire for a long time, thinking. A month ago, he'd been a dead man walking, going through the motions of life without actually living, waiting for the end. Now he had a daughter, a purpose, a future, all because a frozen, starving child had chosen his barn to die in. Funny how life worked sometimes, how the worst moments could lead to the best ones, how pain could transform into something beautiful if you let it. He'd spent 4 years hiding from the world, hiding from connection, hiding from the risk of loving someone again and losing them. But Rosemary had shown him that love was worth the risk, that family wasn't just blood, that home wasn't a place, it was the people who made it sacred. He'd almost missed it, almost let his grief bury him for good. But he hadn't, and neither had she. Two broken people, finding each other in the dark, putting each other back together, piece by piece. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy, but it was theirs, and that was enough. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying with it the first hints of spring. The long winter was finally ending, and something new was about to begin. Spring arrived in the Montana Territory the way it always did. Slowly at first, then all at once. Rosemary stood at the kitchen window, watching the last patches of snow melt into the mud. 2 months had passed since the hearing. 2 months since Martha's escape and surrender. 2 months of learning what it meant to be part of a real family. You're going to wear a hole in that window, Eli said from behind her. I'm watching for the mail. It won't come faster just because you're staring at the road. I know. She turned around, fidgeting with a hem of her dress. But what if they don't approve the papers? What if something went wrong? What if... Rosie. Eli crossed the kitchen and put his hands on her shoulders. Judge Whitmore signed the adoption order herself. The papers are a formality. Nothing's going to go wrong. You don't know that. I know enough, he smiled. Now come help me with the horses. Worrying won't make the mail come faster, but work will make the time pass quicker. She followed him outside, but her eyes kept drifting to the road. The past 2 months had been the best of Rosemary's life. She'd started school in February, walking the 2 miles to the one-room schoolhouse with the Henderson children every morning. Thomas had become her best friend, her first real friend, and his sister Emily had taught her how to braid her hair so it didn't tangle in the wind. She'd learned to play 3 songs on Samuel's harmonica, simple ones, "Oh Susanna," "Amazing Grace," and a lullaby her mama used to sing that she'd figured out by ear. Eli would sit by the fire in the evenings, eyes closed, listening to the thin, sweet notes fill the cabin. You're getting good, he'd told her last night. I want to be great. Then keep practicing. Great takes time. She'd gained 12 pounds since November. Doc Sullivan had pronounced her officially healthy at her last checkup, with the caveat that she needed to keep eating regular meals and getting proper sleep. No more malnutrition, Sullivan had said, smiling. No more nightmares? Sometimes, Rosemary had admitted, but not as bad. And when I wake up scared, Papa's always there. That's what fathers do. Fathers. The word still felt strange and wonderful on her tongue. Now, leading Biscuit out of the barn for her morning grooming, Rosemary thought about how different her life had become. 3 months ago, she'd been sleeping in a shed behind a saloon, eating scraps when she was lucky, dodging Martha's fists when she wasn't. 3 months ago, she'd walked 15 miles through a blizzard to find a place to die. And instead, she'd found a home. "Papa?" Eli looked up from checking Molly's hooves. "Yeah? Do you ever think about what would have happened if I picked a different barn?" "Sometimes."
What do you think? He was quiet for a moment.
"I think I'd still be sitting alone in that cabin, waiting to die. And you'd be—" He stopped. "Dead," Rosemary finished. "I'd be dead. Probably." "So we saved each other." Eli smiled. "I reckon we did." The sound of hoofbeats interrupted them. Rosemary's heart leaped. The mail! But it wasn't the mail carrier who crested the ridge. It was Sheriff Hendricks, riding hard. Eli's hand went to his hip instinctively. "Tom, what's wrong?" Hendricks dismounted, breathing heavy. "Martha Aldridge is dead." The words hung in the air. "What?" Rosemary whispered. "Happened last night, in her cell." Hendricks took off his hat, ran a hand through his hair. "She hanged herself with her bedsheets. Left a note." Eli pulled Rosemary against his side. "What kind of note?" Hendricks reached into his coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "She asked that Rosemary read it."
I told her I'd make sure it got to you, but... He looked at Eli. "It's your call. She doesn't have to read it if she doesn't want to." Rosemary's hand trembled as she reached for the paper. "I want to." "You sure?" Eli asked. "I'm sure." She unfolded the note. The handwriting was shaky, barely legible. "Rosemary, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But you gave it to me anyway, and I've been thinking about that ever since. You were right. About everything. I was broken, and I broke you, because misery loves company, and I didn't know how to be anything else. Your mother saw it in me. She tried to help, once. I pushed her away because help felt like pity, and pity felt like weakness. I killed Vernon. He wasn't a good man, but he didn't deserve what I did. I killed your parents too, not with my hands, but with my heart. I wished them dead so many times, and then they were, and I got what I wanted, and it was worse than anything I'd imagined. You have a good father now." Don't let anyone tell you blood matters more than love. It doesn't. Love is the only thing that matters. I'm going to face whatever judgment waits for me. I hope it's kinder than the judgment I gave others. I hope it's kinder than I deserve. Be happy, Rosemary. Be brave. Be everything I couldn't be. Your aunt, Martha. Rosemary read the letter twice. Then she folded it carefully and put it in her pocket. "Are you okay?" Eli asked softly. "I don't know." She looked up at him with eyes that were too old for her face. "I should be glad, shouldn't I? She hurt me so bad. She tried to kill me. But I just feel... sad? Yeah, sad." She wiped her eyes. "Is that wrong?" "No, sweetheart. That's just human." Hendricks cleared his throat. "There's something else. The judge needs you both in town today. Something about the adoption papers." Eli's jaw tightened. "What about them?" "I don't know the details. She just said it was urgent." Rosemary's stomach dropped. "Something's wrong. I knew something would go wrong." "We don't know that yet." Eli squeezed her shoulder. "Let's go find out." The ride to town felt endless. Rosemary sat in front of Eli, her mind spinning with worst-case scenarios. What if there was a problem with the paperwork? What if some distant relative had emerged to contest the adoption? What if Martha's death had changed something legally? What if she was about to lose everything all over again? By the time they reached the courthouse, she was shaking so hard Eli had to help her down from the horse. "Hey," he knelt in front of her, took her hands. "Whatever happens in there, we face it together. You understand? Nothing and no one is going to take you away from me." "You promise?" "I promise." They walked into the courthouse, hand in hand. Judge Whitmore's chambers were smaller than the courtroom, lined with books and papers. The judge herself sat behind a massive oak desk, looking up as they entered. "Mr. Dawson, Rosemary," she gestured to the chairs in front of her desk. "Please, sit." They sat. Rosemary gripped Eli's hands so tight her knuckles went white. "I assume Sheriff Hendricks told you about Martha Aldridge." "Yes, ma'am," Eli said. "A tragedy, though perhaps not an unexpected one." Whitmore folded her hands on the desk. "But that's not why I called you here." "Then why?" Rosemary couldn't help herself. "Is something wrong with the adoption?" Whitmore studied her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled. "On the contrary, Miss Dawson, everything is exactly right." She reached into her desk and pulled out a thick envelope, sliding it across to Eli. "These are your final adoption papers, signed, sealed, and filed with the territorial government. As of this moment, Rosemary Ann Dawson is legally your daughter in every way that matters." Rosemary stopped breathing. "What?" "You heard me." Whitmore's smile widened. "Congratulations. It's official." Eli opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a certificate, embossed with a territorial seal, with both their names on it. Certificate of Adoption. This is to certify that Rosemary Ann Aldridge, born April 12, 1874, has been legally adopted by Elijah Thomas Dawson of Copper Creek, Montana Territory, as of this date, April 5, 1884. The adoptee shall henceforth be known as Rosemary Ann Dawson, with all rights and privileges pertaining thereto. "It's real," Rosemary whispered. "It's actually real." "There's more." Whitmore pulled out another document. "The territorial government has also transferred ownership of your parents' homestead to Mr. Dawson, to be held in trust for you until you reach majority. The land is yours, Rosemary. No one can take it from you." Eli looked up. "I don't want the land." "Excuse me?" "I don't want it in my name. I want it in hers." He glanced at Rosemary. "She should own her parents' land outright. Not through me, not through anyone else. It's her inheritance." Whitmore raised an eyebrow. "That's highly unusual." "I don't care about usual. I care about right." The judge studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "I'll have the papers drawn up. Rosemary Ann Dawson will be the sole owner of the Aldridge homestead, 160 acres, effective immediately." She paused. "That's a lot of responsibility for a 9-year-old. "She can handle it." Eli looked at Rosemary. "She can handle anything." Rosemary's eyes filled with tears. "Papa, your parents wanted you to have that land. They wanted you to build a life on it, same as they planned to. I'm just making sure that happens." "But it's worth so much money. The railroad." "The railroad can go around." Eli's voice was firm. "Your parents' legacy isn't for sale. Not now, not ever." Rosemary launched herself out of her chair and into his arms. "Thank you," she sobbed. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Eli held her tight. "You're my daughter now. Everything I have is yours. That's what family means." Judge Whitmore watched them with suspiciously bright eyes. She cleared her throat. "One more piece of business." They pulled apart.
Rosemary wiped her face, embarrassed. Martha Aldridge's estate, such as it was, has been liquidated. The Silver Dollar Saloon was sold at auction last week. After her debts were paid, there was a small amount left over. Whitmore slid another envelope across the desk. She specified in her will that it should go to you, Rosemary. Rosemary didn't touch the envelope. I don't want her money. It's not much, a few $100s, but it's yours, whether you want it or not. Whitmore's voice softened. Perhaps you could use it for something good, something she never would have thought of. That might be its own kind of justice. Rosemary looked at Eli. He nodded slightly. She picked up the envelope. I know what I want to do with it.
What's that? There are other kids like me, aren't there? Kids whose parents died? Kids who got sent to live with people who hurt them? Whitmore's expression grew thoughtful. More than you know. Then I want to use this money to help them. Build something. I don't know what yet. A place where they can go when there's nowhere else. Where someone will believe them when they say they're being hurt. Eli's hand found her shoulder. That's a big dream for a little girl, Whitmore said. I'm not little. Rosemary lifted her chin. I'm brave. Whitmore smiled. Yes, I believe you are. They left the courthouse an hour later, papers in hand, the future stretching out before them bright and full of possibility. The town had transformed since Rosemary had first seen it in November. The snow was gone, replaced by mud and new grass. Flowers bloomed in window boxes. Children played in the street, their laughter ringing through the spring air. People stopped them as they walked to their horse. Congratulations, handshakes, hugs from people Rosemary barely knew. Word travels fast, Eli muttered. Is that bad? No, sweetheart. That's community. Pastor Cross intercepted them at the livery stable. Eli, Rosemary. His face was shining. I just heard the news. This calls for a celebration. Pastor. No arguments. Sunday after church, we're having a party at the social hall. The whole town's invited. He beamed at Rosemary. It's not every day a family gets made official. Rosemary looked at Eli, uncertain. What do you think, Papa? You want a party? Eli hesitated. He'd avoided social gatherings for 4 years. The thought of being surrounded by people, of being the center of attention, made his skin crawl. But then he looked at Rosemary's face, at the hope shining in her eyes, at the way she was practically vibrating with excitement at the prospect of being celebrated instead of punished. Sure, he heard himself say. A party sounds nice. Rosemary squealed and threw her arms around his neck. Pastor Cross laughed. It's settled then. Sunday at 2. Don't be late. He walked off, already shouting the news to anyone who would listen. Eli shook his head. What have I gotten myself into? Something wonderful, Rosemary said. That's what. The ride home was different than the ride in. Rosemary sat behind Eli this time, her arms wrapped around his waist, her cheek pressed against his back. She was humming, one of the songs she'd learned on the harmonica, and the sound mixed with the bird song and the wind in a way that made Eli's chest ache with happiness. Papa? Yeah? Can we stop at Mama and Daddy's grave on the way home? I want to tell them the news. Course we can. The cemetery sat on a hill overlooking the valley, surrounded by a low stone wall. Rosemary's parents were buried under a simple wooden cross, their names carved deep into the weathered wood. Thomas Aldridge, Margaret Aldridge, together in life and death. Rosemary knelt in the new grass, her fingers tracing the carved letters. Hi, Mama. Hi, Daddy. Her voice was soft. I came to tell you some things. Eli stood back, giving her space. Martha's dead. She killed herself in jail. I know I should probably be happy about that, but I'm just sad.
She was so broken, Mama. You were right about her. She paused, touching the earth. But the good news is, I'm okay. Better than okay. I have a papa now. His name is Eli, and he's the kindest man I've ever met. He found me when I was dying, and he saved me, just like you wanted. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I read your journal, Mama. I know you loved me. I know you were scared for me. I know you tried to protect me even after you were gone. She pulled out the adoption certificate, held it up as if her parents could see it. Look, I'm a Dawson now. Rosemary Dawson. It sounds nice, doesn't it? Eli's own eyes were burning. I still miss you every day. I still wish you were here. But I think you'd be happy with how things turned out. She smiled through her tears. I'm going to be okay, Mama. Daddy. I promise. She kissed her fingers and pressed them to the cross. I love you. Forever and always. She stood, wiped her face, and walked back to Eli. Thank you, she said quietly, for letting me do that. Don't thank me. They're your parents. You can visit them whenever you want. Can we come back? On their birthdays? And the anniversary of the fire? We'll come back every time you want to. He took her hand. They're part of our family now, too. We don't forget family. Rosemary squeezed his hand tight. I love you, Papa. I love you too, Rosie. More than I know how to say. They walked back to the horse together, leaving the cemetery behind, but carrying the memory forward. Sunday arrived, sunny and warm. The social hall was decorated with wildflowers, Rosemary's request, and the tables were laden with food from every family in town. Pies and cakes and fresh bread, roasted chicken and smoked ham. More food than Rosemary had ever seen in one place. This is all for us? She asked, eyes wide. This is all for you, Eli corrected. I'm just along for the ride. The party was everything Rosemary had imagined and more. She played games with the Henderson children and the Miller twins. She ate 3 pieces of cake and didn't get in trouble for it. She danced to the fiddle music that old Mr. Patterson played, spinning and laughing until she was dizzy. And everywhere she went, people congratulated her, welcomed her, treated her like she belonged. Because she did. Halfway through the party, Pastor Cross called for everyone's attention. Friends, we're here today to celebrate something special. A family made not by blood, but by choice, by love, by the grace of God and the stubborn determination of 2 people who refused to give up on each other. The crowd murmured in agreement. Elijah Dawson came to this territory 30 years ago with nothing but a rifle and a dream. He built a life here, lost that life when tragedy struck. And many of us, Cross's voice grew heavy with regret. We let him disappear into his grief. We should have reached out. We should have helped. We didn't. Eli shifted uncomfortably. But then something happened. A child in need found her way to his door. And Eli did what many of us failed to do. He opened that door. He let her in. He gave her everything he had left to give. Rosemary found Eli's hand and held it tight. That's not just kindness, friends. That's courage. The courage to love again after loss. The courage to hope again after despair. The courage to choose family when the world tells you to choose safety. Cross raised his glass. To Eli and Rosemary Dawson, may their family grow, may their love deepen. May they never forget that this community stands with them, today and always. Hear, hear, the crowd shouted. Glasses raised, cheers echoed. Rosemary buried her face in Eli's side, overwhelmed. You okay? He murmured. I never knew people could be this nice. Neither did I. Guess we were both wrong. After the toast, Doc Sullivan approached them, a wrapped package in her hands. "A gift," she said, pressing it into Rosemary's hands. "For your new room." Rosemary unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a framed sampler, embroidered with delicate stitches. "Home is where love lives." "It's beautiful," Rosemary breathed. "Thank you." "You're welcome," Sullivan smiled. "You've come a long way from that frozen girl I examined 4 months ago. I'm proud of you." "I'm proud of me too." Sullivan laughed. "Good. You should be." As the party wound down, Eli found Rosemary sitting alone on the steps of the social hall, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. He sat down beside her. "Tired?" "Happy tired. The good kind." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. "Papa?" "Yeah?" "Do you think Samuel would have liked me?" The question caught him off guard. Where did that come from? "I've been thinking about him. About how we're both Dawsons now. About how I sleep in his room and play his harmonica and—" She paused. "I don't want to replace him. I just want to know if he would have been okay with sharing you." Eli was quiet for a long moment. "Samuel was the kindest boy I ever knew. He used to bring home injured animals, birds with broken wings, rabbits caught in snares, and nurse them back to health. He couldn't stand to see anything suffer." Rosemary listened. "If he'd met you, seen what you'd been through, seen how strong you are—" Eli's voice cracked. "He would have loved you, Rosie. He would have claimed you as his sister before I even thought to claim you as my daughter." "Really?" "Really." He put his arm around her. "You're not replacing him. You're continuing him, carrying his light forward into the future. That's not theft. That's legacy." Rosemary leaned against him. "I wish I could have met him." "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." They watched the last of the sunset fade into purple twilight. "Ready to go home?" Eli asked. Rosemary smiled. "Yeah, Papa. Let's go home." The ride back was quiet, peaceful. Rosemary fell asleep halfway there, slumped against Eli's back, the harmonica clutched in her hand. He rode slow, not wanting to wake her, savoring the weight of her against him. His daughter, his family, his reason for living. 4 months ago, he'd been waiting to die. Now, he was learning how to live again. The cabin appeared in the moonlight, the new barn beside it, the whole homestead looking more alive than it had in years. Eli carried Rosemary inside and tucked her into bed, pulling the quilt up to her chin the way he used to do with Samuel. "Good night, Rosie." "Night, Papa," she murmured, already mostly asleep. "Love you." "Love you too." He closed her door softly and walked to the fireplace. Samuel's harmonica sat on the mantel now, next to a photograph of Rosemary that Doc Sullivan had taken at the party. Father and daughter, side by side. 2 pictures of 2 children. One gone, one found. Both loved, both remembered, both part of him forever. Eli touched Samuel's photograph gently. "Thank you," he whispered, "for sending her to me." He could almost hear his son's laugh in response. Outside, the spring wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of new growth, new beginnings, new life. The long winter was over. And in a cabin on the edge of the frontier, a family that had been broken was finally whole again. Not perfect, not without scars, but whole. And that was everything. Elijah Dawson stood at his window and watched the stars come out one by one, his daughter sleeping safely in the next room, his heart full of a love he'd thought he'd lost forever. He'd learned something this winter, something he wished he'd known years ago. Grief didn't have to be the end of the story. Sometimes, it was just the hard ground you had to break before something new could grow. And what grew from Eli's grief, what bloomed in the spring after the longest winter of his life, was a family. Imperfect, unexpected, beautiful. His. Forever. The end.